About this time a year ago, 13-year-old Grace was feeling bullied and miserable in school. Her sister was already a member of North Star, but Grace and her family had hoped she might benefit from what school had to offer. It wasn't working, and Grace joined North Star and embarked on self-directed learning. She mostly kept to herself in our library, but at our end-of-year presentations last May, Grace surprised us all by pulling out a guitar and singing a song. It was a huge risk. And when it was over, she told us, "The main thing I learned at North Star this year was self-confidence." Self-confidence, I wondered. Really? You avoided us all. So I asked, "Grace, how did you learn self-confidence?" She looked at me over her guitar. "I learned I could say no to adults. In school, you could never say no." Grace put words to the feelings Joshua Hornick and I had when we left school teaching to start North Star back in 1996. We wanted to be able to ask students like Grace whether she wanted to be in our classes or whether she wanted our help in any way. We didn't see how we could develop such relationships in a school, but we knew that self-directed learning through the legal process of homeschooling was the approach that we needed. We've learned a lot, but the main thing I can tell you is that making self-directed learning possible for any interested teen is the most simple and powerful way for you to make Guernsey the best place on earth to live by 2020. Today I want to talk a little bit about self-directed learning, share some stories from North Star, and propose an idea for making the whole process more accessible. But back to Grace. Taking no for an answer, sitting alone in a library, isn't that irresponsible? Shouldn't adults be getting in there and making her do things? I used to think so. That's why I became a teacher. I knew what students needed to learn, and I was going to inspire them to do so. When it didn't work, at first, when I struggled, I thought it was because of the rigid curriculum or the large class sizes. But as my career continued, I decided there was a bigger problem. Most students really didn't want to be there. Every day, I'd see students who were dull and passive in my classroom become fantastic athletes, imaginative artists, and even hard workers outside of school. Why weren't they like that with me? I wondered. Joshua and I lamented the situation, and he gave me a copy of the Teenage Liberation Handbook by Grace Llewellyn, my first introduction to homeschooling, unschooling, self-directed learning, and I was amazed. Teens thriving without going to school, teens moving on to university and the adult work world successfully without even a traditional high school diploma? You mean school isn't just frustrating, it's unnecessary? Oh, my. But that presented an interesting solution. Joshua and I would resign our jobs and create a program that would support any student to use this approach. And that's pretty much what we've been doing for the past 20 years, helping teens who feel miserable, trapped, bored, resigned in school to have an immediate option to dramatically change their lifestyle. I want to say a word about self-directed learning. It's really not that complicated. It's really what we all do every day. It's how we approach our hobbies and interests, cooking, reading, sports, music. It's what we do with new questions and concerns around health and money and parenting. It's what we do when we have unexpected problems, cars and computers and cell phones. It's amazing how much we all learn by starting with our strengths and our interests and dealing with our weaknesses as we need to. Self-directed learning, at its finest, is this conference, Thrive2020. Look at us. A few good people of the Dandelion Project have brought together a cast of fascinating characters to share some ideas about how to build a healthier community, and you have chosen to be here. Do you want to know the best way to ruin this event? Let's make it compulsory. Every family in Guernsey must have a representative here. We'll take attendance to make sure no one leaves. We'll have quizzes at the end of each presentation, homework essays tonight to be sure you're thinking. And if you do poorly, you can come back next week and watch the videos and try again. And if you do well, we'll put your names in the newspaper as people who might merit some influence in this community. And while we're at it, don't forget we could tell you where to sit, as Mark seems to be trying to do, when you can go to the bathroom and take away those phones, right? What a nightmare. But it's why so many kids dread going to school every day. Can't we have a system that people love? Of course we can. It starts by treating young people the way we're treating ourselves. And we know how to do this. We do it every day where young people have choices about what to attend. After-school programs, weekends, summers. People love those things. Where am I? And from that perspective, North Star, it's very simple to understand. We're not a school, we're a community center, we're a program, we're a place. We have classes and activities and tutors and mentors, connections to the communities. But no one ever has to be there, and when they're there, they have complete choice over how to use the place. We don't have letter grades to evaluate students. We don't have credits to give or withhold. We don't have diplomas to confer or deny. And it works beautifully. In the short term, we see students change from being exhausted and stressed to alive and happy. In the long run, most of the students move on to university, though not all, and some travel or work or start businesses or find other programs to do. It's really a marvelous place, and not just for the young people, it's also a really great place for those of us who work there. I want to share 3 stories to describe the categories of teens that we frequently see. The first is a young man who's doing just fine in school, excelling actually, but bored to tears. One day the phone rings. It's Oliver's mother. She wants to know if we have after-school enrichment things and programming and gaming and philosophy and I don't know. And I say, well, we have all those activities, but they're not after school, they're instead of school. There was some silence on the phone. Oliver joined, and he became immediately engaged with all of us, but for the first couple of years, he really refused to do any of his mother's brilliant homeschooling assignments. We'd have meetings. She'd be worried. He'd be apologetic. He'd say, Mom, I'm waiting for lightning to strike, and if I fill my life with your busy work, I'm afraid that won't happen. It was hard. Oliver actually loved math. He started studying on his own. By 15, he was taking a calculus class at the community college. By 16, he was taking advanced abstract bizarre seminars at the University of Massachusetts, where he went on to enroll in the honors college, double majored in mathematics and Chinese, graduated at age 20. He's now a fully functioning employed adult. You never know, he skipped out on school. The second story I want to tell is about a teen who arrived in some degree of emotional distress, anxiety, depression, all those kinds of things. When Laura was 13 in 8th grade, she was also a straight-A young person in school, she developed health problems, and it made her really anxious about being in school. She couldn't go. Every day her mom would drive her, and she'd sob in the car. When she came to North Star the first time, she looked one look in our common room, all these kids. She said, there's no way I can go in there. I can't do things for those people. And her advisor said, well, how about having some one-on-one meetings with adults here? Really, you can do that? And Laura, for 3 years, came to North Star for one-on-one meetings, writing, history, math, science, philosophy, all kinds of stuff. During those years, she resumed dancing at her community school. She performed in a rock band with her sister and friend, winning local competitions. Took some online classes and things like astrobiology. And just before 11th grade year started that August, I get a phone call. It's Laura. Ken, I've had an epiphany. I don't need to be nervous about groups anymore. And my advisor and I, we're going to start a new class. We're going to co-teach a class called Growing Up Female. Okay, it was a hit, of course. And Laura started doing all kinds of things at North Star. She went on the lecture circuit with me, talking at conferences like this, believe it or not. She got a job in a guitar store teaching young girls guitar lessons. She aced her standardized tests and got accepted to all kinds of competitive colleges, and she's very satisfied with her life right now. And the third story I want to tell you is about a young person, or represents all the young people who are resisting, refusing, not trying in school. When Jonah was 12, he missed 42 days of school in 6th grade, mostly because the school would call up his parents and go, really? No need to send Jonah today. It's okay. Keep him home. One day, that year, he was sitting at his desk by the window. He couldn't take it anymore. He climbed up onto his desk and marched across desktop to desktop till he got to the door and walked out. The first couple years Jonah was with us, he loved rock climbing. He went to the gym and he started doing competitions, and he won some local and state competitions. When he was 15, he decided, I'm interested in chemistry. And he went to UMass, audited a class, took a second one for credit, earned an A, decided that was enough chemistry for him. He decided he was fascinated by our whole approach. He read my whole shelf of John Holt books, about 20 other classics as well. He interned with our outreach director, edited our newsletter. This is a boy who never wrote before, editing our newsletter. And at 17, he became the youngest participant in a community college's outdoor leadership program, after which Jonah was hired by the state of Connecticut to work with troubled teens out in the woods for months at a time. He just finished his 3rd year in that job, and Jonah finally is older than the teens that he mentors. He's currently in Switzerland, rock climbing today, as we're sitting here. All of these teens are special to me, but in a larger sense, they're not that unique. They didn't arrive at North Star all mature and self-directed. These are traits they developed over the years by having a chance to make meaningful choices about their lives. And none of them or their families would have sustained self-directed learning without a center like North Star. They all needed a place, a community to be part of. But they did not need that place to require them to attend 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. They did not need that place to force them to learn things in which they were not particularly interested. They did not need that place to decide for them when they could move on to the next phase of their lives. I want all teens to have the opportunities that these young people have had. Right now, given our homeschooling laws, self-directed learning is available for all those families who know the process, understand it, and have the confidence to opt out. For 20 years, my concern has been how to make that approach accessible and sustainable for any interested family. We now have a network of people interested around the world called Liberated Learners. It's about a dozen centers around the United States and Canada. And some of you here in Guernsey might be interested to start such a program. But that's not really why I'm here. I'm here to propose a bigger idea. Let's transform schools into North Stars. Guernsey might just be the place to start. My vision is that we keep the schools, keep the buildings, keep the teachers, keep the equipment. Just let students choose how to use all of these resources. And do so with no scolding, no judgment, no pressure on those who choose to use those resources minimally. Let's keep the best parts of school and stop doing the one thing that's ruining it, treating young people as a captive audience. Whenever I share this idea, even with friends, there's a lot of skepticism. First, people say, well, if they're not forced to study all these topics, a lot of students will avoid many subjects. Yes. Self-directed learning is not a trick to get people to do things that we want them to do. But 100 years of compulsory schooling have not shown us any good way to get everybody to learn everything. And the point is that trying to get everybody to learn everything is what's making the whole thing so unappealing. Also, I am certain that we underestimate the willingness of teens to study traditional academics for their own merits, because the stuff is interesting to many people, and we underestimate the willingness of teens to choose to take courses and learn material they think they may need in the future. We can trust them. It works. I see it every day. The second concern is that, what about college, admissions, university? How will that ever happen? And by now, many of you know that self-directed learners, homeschoolers, have a fine track record of getting accepted to and thriving at universities all over the world. There are many paths to admission. Certain tests, starting college early during your part-time during your high school years, personal statements and portfolios, online courses, among others. Again, we can trust that teens who aspire to university can comprehend that doing so requires serious preparation and study. It works. The third concern is about making school optional. We risk overlooking or losing some children. Well, right now, in our current system, there's lots of students who aren't trying, stop attending, and drop out. And consider just for a moment the possibility that giving students the opportunity to choose the parts of school they value without getting in trouble for declining the other aspects could be a way to keep more people more engaged for longer periods of time. Making school optional is not abandoning vulnerable families. It's giving them a choice. It's empowering them, a choice they've never had before. Let's transform schools by changing the one fundamental premise that's so difficult from we believe we must make students learn to we trust that students want to learn. I'm not even sure that would cost any money. Having a structure that allows students to choose their courses and activities while saying, no thank you, or not now, to the rest, would be treating young people the way we're treating ourselves. Without North Star, Grace and her family were trapped in a system that wasn't working for them. She needed something different, something more flexible. She needed an opportunity to prioritize her own concerns. She was grateful, and she showed that by singing to us. The world's very different now from the one for which compulsory schooling was invented a century ago. Self-directed learning is a better preparation for the 21st century society and economy than our current model. I left a career in school teaching because I did not think I could transform the system very far in this direction. But you, here in Guernsey, have a special chance to change the fundamental premise of schooling by starting a system with the idea of self-directed learning, and more importantly, by trusting yourselves and your children. You'll make Guernsey the best place on earth to live by 2020. Thank you.